Craig here for another edition of Now Age TV with my friend Paul Street. Hey, Paul.
Hey, how you doing?
I'm doing all right. Paul is a historian, author, and journalist, and one of the important voices of reason on the left. So if you need a reason for reason,
Yeah,
check out Paul.
yeah.
So we're going to go through a couple of things, talk about pieces that we've written this week. But there's breaking news. I'm sure everybody what Paul knows about at the at the practice congressional Republican baseball whatever this morning they were doing. Somebody showed up with I guess an AK-47 assault rifle, started shooting the place up.
Do the Republicans play the Democrats in baseball? Is that what they do?
No, the Republicans were just practicing. They were scrimmaging, I guess, or whatever.
I know, but in practicing for what? I mean, I guess they have. They probably have.
They play a game. Yeah, they play a game every year.
All right, I didn't know if it was a game of the Democrats versus the Republicans or what. Yeah.
Yeah. So, and it turns out that the guy was a, like late '60s guy. I mean, he was killed by Capitol Police, and late '60s, kind of Trump hating liberal, kind of.
Enraged white male liberal.
Enraged white, yeah, and this is kind of just like without getting too much into this. It's like sort of like I've been saying for a while. It's like our society is designed to make you insane, right? Either you acquiesce to the game, which means like you become totally insanely insensitive and lacking empathy of your fellow human being. So all you could do is make sure you get ahead in the little capitalist chessboard, right? Or or you're just totally numbed out and drugged out by whatever you need just to be able to put up with it. Or you're resisting it, and then, like this guy, you go totally insane and just start shooting up Congress people. But, I mean, it's like there aren't many options left in between for sanity. Go ahead.
Wasn't that guy that years ago that flew his plane into the IRS down in Austin, Texas, Stacks?
Yeah.
He really actually left a very coherent manifesto that ended up being grist for the mills of both Noam Chomsky, he's quoted from it at length, and Chris Hedges. And it's like this articulate assault on how there's, nothing left for the middle class and these heartfelt stories of working class decline and nobody can make a living. I mean, Jesus Christ, I think it's down to now 5 people. I saw this in the news yesterday, own as much wealth as the bottom half of humanity.
Yeah.
It's almost impossible to make a living anymore, except for a certain small, relatively minority segment of the population. So yeah, people are going nuts now. But I was very interested to hear this story, though, because in my experience, it isn't just bitter, old, crazy, pissed off white Fox News watchers. And I've had some horrible interactions over the years, and I'm on the left, obviously not the right, with a lot of real cranky, sort of paranoid and damn near violent and vicious liberals too. That exists too. I'm not surprised. I was kind of wondering with one of these sort of really ticked off, just can't take it anymore, white liberals was going to do something like this. So there you go.
Yeah, there you go. So
not surprising.
you had 2 pieces you always have a couple of pieces out. One of them, because you were a featured columnist or contributor or whatever they would call it now over at TruthDig.
I'm something. What?
You're a what? You're called a what?
I'm something. I don't know what I'm called, but I'm over there.
Yeah. You're Paul over there. Impeach the U.S. Constitution, which I was excited to read because I think after reading it, I'm trying to do it, but I just can't figure it out. But there were some really good points you made in there, which I mean, as a historian, because people should know that you're a doctor of history in case you fall down and forgot how you fell down, and the history doctor will help.
If history breaks its knee, I'm the guy.
Exactly. So things like that it was set up to protect the ruling class to begin with, and it was anti-democratic, and then how you lead to sort of this sort of checkmating of democracy, and how we get to the minority right-wing rule of 2017, and basically it's the Constitution that allows all this to happen. So can you elaborate a little bit?
Well, I'm a doctor of history. I'm an ear, nose, and throat specialist, actually. But can you hear me? Oh, okay, all right. The Constitution is this deified, fetishized document. I mean, the law students. I was just sitting in a coffee house once, and these law students were sitting around reading some constitutional document, and so, they're reading a court opinion, but everything in a court opinion is, what did the founders want? And then one of the law students said to the other, we've made gods out of these guys. Well, it's really kind of preposterous how much we bow down and pray to this incredibly authoritarian right-wing classist charter on the part of these wealthy slave owners and merchant capitalists and big landed proprietors, for whom democracy was the ultimate nightmare. And they said so. They said this in the Federalist Papers, which are these arguments for the Constitution by James Madison, Alexander Hamilton, and John Jay. And they say so, certainly Madison and Hamilton do, in all the constitutional debates that took place in Philadelphia leading to this charter. And they construct a government precisely designed to keep popular democracy at bay. That's what it's all about. That's what the Electoral College is about. That's what checks and balances is about, and the dividing up of sovereignty between the different branches of government is all about. Their ultimate nightmare is that the propertyless people and the property poor people, all of whom are perceived as inherently dangerous because they have no real stake in society, will sort of seize control of the government. And you have all these deeply entrenched structures that are very brilliantly designed to destroy democracy from the outset. And people say, well, what does that matter? What's that got to do with the 20th and the 21st century? Well, it's intimately related. If you're a liberal Democrat, maybe this guy that shot up people today was thinking about this. I don't know. There's this drastic overrepresentation. We don't even have direct popular election of the U.S. president because of the Electoral College system created by the Holy Founders. We don't even have a presidential campaign. We don't have a popular majority vote of for the president. We don't even have a real serious presidential campaign in most of the country. And we have this drastic overrepresentation of small rural states. They get 2 extra Electoral College votes for the fact that they got 2 senators, and Montana has the same number of people in the U.S. Senate as California does. And what does it have? 1/20th of the population, 100th of the population? I think it's 39 million in California, and something like 500,000 in is it Wyoming? I mean, you name your out there small agricultural state. And you have this ridiculous overrepresentation of the right wing, very disproportionately white, rural red zones parts of the country, and that's among other things. It's not all of it at all by any stretch, but that's a factor in why the Republicans rule over a country that hates the Republican Party. The way we do presidential elections, and any government as dysfunctional and stupid and vicious and idiotic and incompetent, even on its own terrain, even on its own standards of trying to get legislation passed, in many other wealthy capitalist countries right now, it'd be time to call new elections. They failed to form a governing coalition. Now that's in a parliamentary system. And no one ever, you don't even think about calling new elections in the United States of America because the Holy Constitution mandates that people get to go in a little voting booth for 5 minutes once every 4 years. I think that's every 1,460 days. And choose between Tweedledum and Tweedledee. Well, we should have impeachment. That's allowed under the Constitution. It's very difficult to pull off both impeachment and removal. Removal requires 2/3 of the Senate. But even if you did, then you have an even more right-wing, screwed up, vicious white nationalist lunatic than Trump named Mike Pence. And then the Republican agenda sailed, the right-wing arch-regressive Republican agenda sails through perhaps even more quickly under Pence. And, you could go on and on with all kinds of other problems in the Constitution. How the Senate representation is just absolutely absurd. We say, well, the founders set up a process whereby we could change the Constitution through amendments. The amendment process is on purpose, by design, absurdly difficult. You'd have to get 3/4 of the House, 3/4 of the Senate. I think I've got this right. Somebody, a real constitutional scholar can check me on that. And then it has to get past 2/3 of the states in state constitutional conventions, which, let me tell you right now, for any of the things that most of the American people say they want, for progressive, we wanted to get constitutional amendments for, basic things, like take take private money out of public election. Like, let's have some proportional representation in our federal elections, right? So that 20% of the vote could mean 20% of the people in Congress. How's a third party ever supposed to start when you gotta have 51% your first time out? It's not going to happen. You got to be able to build. You got 20% has to be able to mean something, and I could go through the whole list of these things that theoretically would have majority support for constitutional amendments. Forget about it, because it's just too difficult, and that was on purpose. They wanted to make the amendment process very difficult. The only damn reason we got a bunch of slavery abolished was the Civil War led to the removal of the slave states from the Constitution long enough that we could get the 13th, 14th, and 15th Amendments through there. So, I could go on about the Constitution. Other countries change their charters all the time. The average life of a Constitution globally is like 17 years or something like that. I found the statistic at the end of my essay. Here we're with a document from 1789 that is like this iron cage. We're like rats running around inside. Can we do this? Can we do that? We can't do this. We can't do that, and it's got to go. We've never been asked to vote on the nature of the charter that sets up the rules of how politics take place in this country. We're allowed to sort of go into the bus and pick what seat we want to sit in, but there's no vote on what bus we're on or where it's going. And so here we are with this ridiculous document. We need a constituent assembly. We need to vote on what kind of government we want. Now, we can have a great government on paper too. We still need to have class struggle and people's movements and social power from the bottom up out there. Don't get me wrong, it's not a magic bullet, but it is a basic part of what would be any kind of democratic revolution in this country. And it's amazing to me how little it gets talked about on the left. There are some very brilliant authors that have said a lot more about this than me, and I think particularly Daniel Lazar, and I really recommend his books, including Frozen Republic, which I think came out in the mid-1990s, which do a far better job than I did in my essay about this issue.
Yeah. Well, I'll link to the complete essay in Truthdig, so I encourage people to go and read it, because there's a lot of stuff there that, the notion that it is enshrined and that is untouchable and that it's a perfect document is we're all kind of, acculturated to that. And
the Supreme Court is appointed for life, right? And the Supremes have said now twice, in the Buckley-Vallejo decision and then later in the Citizens United decision in 2010. You put those two decisions together, big money is considered to be free speech. Nobody believes that in this country. Well, the ACLU does, unfortunately. And there's no limits to how much money an individual capitalist contributor can spend to buy, how much capitalists can spend to buy our politicians, which everybody in America thinks is insane. Right. Just about everybody in America thinks it's insane. But too bad, because the Supreme Court say so. It's like Simon says, Constitution says.
Yep. The other piece you got in Counterpeach, 12 blasphemous thoughts, some summer sacrilege, which is also pretty interesting reading. 12 items here, and I'm going to scoot to the sort of the last one, something rotten in the state of independent left media. And anybody we talk about this all the time, that just because things are happening independent on the left, it doesn't mean that it's pure as roses. It just seems like where human nature comes in, things have the potential to go rotten. So what are you getting at here?
Well, I think I set a new North American record, I'm told, for the most blasphemous thoughts in one 3,000-word article. They said Alexander Cockburn had more in an article in the late 1990s, but if you read my essay, 12 Blasphemous Thoughts, within one of the blasphemous thoughts, there are actually 3 sub-blasphemous thoughts. That brings me out to 15 blasphemous. That's it. Including really horrific things like people should stop having children until we overcome anthropogenic climate change. And then I have the blasphemous thought that it really isn't anthropogenic climate change, it's capital-ogenic climate change. And I won't even go into that right now. I lead with the blasphemous thought that while there's no smoking gun proof at all that Russia interfered in the election last year, then I go, well, if they did, wouldn't that have been them doing their job, trying to stop Hillary Clinton in the foreign policy establishment, who were hell bent on some sort of disastrous confrontation and possibly catastrophic conflict with Russia over Syria, Ukraine, or whatever? Now, this last thought I had there came at the end is about some of the problems that exist on left media, and this came up because of an interview I had with Jared Ball, who is this wonderful left black academician, and he has a TV show called I Mix What I Like. And in the process of talking about David Garrow's epic biography of Barack Obama, which I did this long review of on Counterpunch, I told him the story. Jared Ball, like me, and like a bigger than people know group of folks on the left, were warning about the Obama phenomena from day one, okay, from the beginning. And in my case, from the keynote address in 2004, saying, uh-oh, Obama pretending to be a progressive, pretending to be liberal, pretending to be anti-war. He is none of these things. This guy's a problem. A lot of us said that on the left. So anyway, we're talking about that, and I related to him my story of my book, written mostly in 2007, called Barack Obama and the Future of American Politics, published in June '08. Essentially, I'm going to sound like I'm bragging, but essentially it predicts the whole neoliberal, right-wing, corporatist, and frankly, objectively white supremacist Obama presidency. Okay? Predicts it. Warns about it. I'm in this moment between the election. Everyone's all gaga for Obama, thinking
this is 08. This is 08.
Oh, wait. I'm in this period between the election and the inauguration. My publisher has me booked with Democracy Now!, which is wholly sacrosanct, Amy Goodman. And I'm going to go out to New York, and I do go out to New York. My publisher flies me out to New York, and I am going to just lay bare. I'm going to update my book for her and for her audience. What's coming? Which was very obvious because we had Larry Summers on we had this right-wing corporatist transition team. We had all these big Council on Foreign Relations imperialists and the transition team, and it was all just perfectly extrapolated from everything that I'd found about the history of Obama in my book. And I get out there and I'm excited, and it's New York, right? And if you can make it in New York, you can make it anywhere, right? New York, New York, if you can make it. And so I actually get as far as the Port Authority. I'm staying with my friends in Montclair, New Jersey. I get to the Port Authority. What is that, up in the 40s somewhere? Not far from the New York Times building. And I'm walking out there, and I'm on 6th Avenue. It's cold as hell. And my cell phone rings, and there's this young intern from Democracy Now! She says, Amy and Juan can't talk to you anymore. You've been canceled. And I'll never forget, she said, is that okay? Is that okay? Well, they had something else, which happens in news media. That happens in news media. There's something came out. That's fine. But there was never any effort to make it up. No attempt to reschedule. It was just dropped, and I just bet you, $10 at least, or maybe more, that that was about negative feedback, anticipation of negative feedback from all these sort of liberally lefty viewers. Who just wanted to believe all these things about Obama. Would it have made any difference for me to have gotten on this show? Would that have somehow changed the trajectory of left liberal consciousness? I sort of doubt it, but who knows? So I never get on there to warn people before the inauguration, and so that's in there. And as I'm talking to Jared, and when I'm through telling Jared this story, he tells me the story that when he had me on last year on his network. I'm not going to give their name. It's another independent left media network, where I sort of just laid out some of the very basic and standard left critiques of Bernie sheepdog Sanders, particularly around issues of foreign policy and the defense budget. Bernie F-35 Sanders. And again, sort of articulated a lot of themes that real left intellectuals, real left critics have been raising about Sanders. And he recalled publicly for his audience that got him in a lot of trouble and ended up and contributed to his eventual discharge from this independent left media. And I just thought to myself, that's how I ended up writing that blasphemous thought. I said, we've really got a problem here. And just as I was writing that, I realized that Amy had sort of given some credence to the Russia Gate. Amy and Juan and Democracy Now! had given some credence. I found some indications of that to this whole insane Russia cover story for the Democrats' failure, Russiagate. Even The Intercept, right, with Glenn Greenwald, which is not independent left media. It is a product of a PayPal billionaire whose name I can never pronounce properly, who I believe pays Greenwald somewhere from $250,000 to $1 million a year to be as brilliant, don't get me wrong, brilliant leading civil liberties journalist. And I found out that they'd given some credence to this. And furthermore, that the great Matt Taibbi, who I just love, because he's hilarious and he's brilliant and he's funny about Goldman Sachs and Wall Street and how they're screwing over the American working class and everyone else they can take care of. And that he's recently published in Rolling Stone, which again is not Rolling Stone is not independent left media, but Matt Taibbi is kind of an independent, very liberal left voice. And even he is sort of caught by my friend Joe Emsberger on Tell Us Our English, basically getting involved in the right-wing baiting of Venezuela's socialist president Maduro. I'm not a great fan of Maduro, but Taibbi ends up citing these right-wing ruling class American-funded bastards, to that effect. And so I was like, wait a minute, something's wrong here. There's something rotten in the state of left media, and it's frankly it's a star system. I don't need to be a star, but they've got a star system in terms of who gets on and who doesn't. That's sort of crowding out other voices. And on Obama, I mean, I'm going to brag here, but I mean nobody was had a better track record out there early, trying to warn people, in very richly researched and annotated kinds of ways than I did. And it's just a no-go. I mean, I get contacted by other countries. I get contacted by media in Iran, in Russia, Western Europe. I've been invited to Cuba to speak. I'm currently invited to
Iran, Russia, and Cuba.
But the left media in the United States of America, no.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I guess that just proves the point, right?
Yeah. There you go. Yeah.
I really am a fifth columnist.
Yeah, no doubt, comrade.
Yeah.
So over to my stuff. I had two things go on this week, as usual. I've got my Now Age Minute and my term limits for celebrities. Which one you want to kick into there?
Yeah, I read a number of your pieces. I want to ask you: are you with Hillary Clinton and also with Kirsten Gillabrand? Are you telling highly placed women to shut up here, or what? And what, particularly Kirsten Gillabrand, I'm fascinated by your piece on her. What the fuck is going on with her dropping F-bombs now?
Well, yeah, I mean, this kind of came out the other day, and one of my columns I write is called "Term Limits for Celebs," with the idea, obviously, that it's not the politicians that need term limits; it's the celebrities that need them, for the celebrity's sake and for our sake. And we have some people crossing over between politics and celebrity. Last week, sort of was Hillary Clinton, who just after I write things, somehow I forget what but last week's piece was about whatever she came out and did was so over the top and crazy. This week, Kirsten Gillabrand, she's at some conference, and it kind of caught my eye because I had been following this a little bit, but she drops the F-bomb. The kind of piece is that saying fuck all the way to the White House. And that's basically turns out to be the sort of DNC sort of plan here, if there's an unwritten plan. But she basically says, if we're not helping people, we should go the fuck home. And she also, another time she drops it and kind of, it seems very staged if you read.
I think a lot of us would agree with that particular sentence.
Absolutely, but you watch the video that I laid in there, and you see how sort of unspontaneous that it is. And then I went back to a piece by Politico, where it kind of talked about how she's been doing this kind of consistently, where In a piece in New York Magazine, Gillabrand included one fuck, two fuckings, one bullshit, one pissed off, and one they suck, and one what the hell is going on. And then also DNC Chairman Tom Perez, who's just awkward about everything. I think he's just an awkward human being. But he's trying to. He's also was getting into that.
What is this? What is this?
So he's saying, don't give it. Republicans don't give a shit about people. And now the Democrats are selling a T-shirt that says "Democrats give a shit about people." So I just found it to be totally interesting. In other words, that talk about something that we need instead of drooling over the Comey and Russia and Flynn and Trump and this and that. How about give us fucking single payer, okay? This is something where Obamacare is going to go up in goddamn flames, okay? Because the Republicans before July 4th recess are going to, the Senate is going to they're going to vote on something and they're going to kind of come to agreement with that crazy wackadoo House plan. And in the meantime, the Democrats got nothing. All they got is Russia, 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 fuck this, fuck that, Russia, Russia, Russia. And, so my take was like, you know what? You're not helping us. Go the fuck home.
So they're cussing to sound working class and populist?
It seems to me, at one point in this video...
It's just symbolism, because it sounds like they really don't even know how to cuss, right? It's almost like they're forcing it. So they're trying to sound like they've just walked into a working class tavern and they're sidled up to the bar and they've asked for a whiskey and a shot, a shot and a beer. And I go, the fuck? And they probably don't know how to do it. And they think this is going to get the proletariat and the middle class on their side, not actually offering shit like the Employee Free Choice Act to re-legalize unions or single-payer health insurance or like really big green jobs programs that could like save the climate too, as well as putting people to work. What the fuck?
Exactly, what the fuck? I put a tweet in here from Gillabrand in March, actually on my birthday, March 9th. She says, access to health care is a human right. Now that millions more Americans finally have it, it'd be wrong of us to take it away. Now, she's really coy there, because what she says is a human right. She's playing on Sanders' kind of phraseology that he uses to push, his idea of single payer, but he's another one now who's kind of pulled his bill. Well, not... He's hedged his bill, we'll say, about single payer. You got nothing here. You have such an opportunity here against these crazy, uber neoliberal Republicans who are just taking all the regulations out of everything that exists, just for the hell of doing it, while, the Democrats are going, drooling over Russia, 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 when there's no evidence of anything. There's nothing. They've got nothing. But they've got everybody so brainwashed.
You think about all the goddamn things that people would have a legitimate reason to get rid of Trump.
Yeah.
Which to me, the top of the list would be his promise to deregulate energy. We are, as I put in my 12 blasts, I linked in my 12 blasphemous thoughts article. We're now headed to 500 parts per million of carbon in the atmosphere by 2050 at the current rate of increase. In fact, we could get there sooner. And, Trump's promise to deregulate energy, go with Keystone Pipeline, go with the Back and Access Pipeline, pretty much amounts to what Noam Chomsky's called a death knell for the species. And we could go on about the racism and the nativism and the immigrant bashing and the anti-worker policies. And they want to fucking get rid of, but Kirsten Gillabrand's got me in the mood, I guess, for saying this word. They want to go after this guy over some mythical no-smoking gun neo-Watergate story about Russia.
Yep.
It's just incredible. Which is supposed to shut all of us up. And I guess a lot of us on the left are supposed to just go pragmatically. Well, they didn't really swing the election. If this is the way to get rid of him, maybe that's the way to go. Maybe we can get him out of there that way. Yeah, and then we get Mike Pence.
Yeah. And for them, it's all about winning. It's not about winning. It's about winning for them. It's not about winning for the people. They don't give a shit what the people want, It's just about some sort of sport. It's just a sport. How do we win back now? Give us what we fucking want. What do the statistics show about how many people want single-payer health care?
Now, a lot of lefty Democrats met in Chicago last week. Was it,
the People's Summit.
the People's Summit, and there was a rousing speech by Sanders, and he said something that I think you and I would agree with, which is that the model of the Democratic Party right now is a complete, total, abject failure. But he clings to this notion of working within that party. I guess we'll see, right? There are generational changes coming over time. I can see
Right.
the older people, but I don't know that we have that kind of a time frame.
No, but also,
The change that we need to wait for all the millennials to become the power, who
yeah,
are left of the baby boomers. They are, but to wait for them to become the power brokers, I think we're too far gone environmentally by then,
yeah,
and
but
still can't address the goddamn empire, which he's still attached to, which eats up 55% of discretional spending, and therefore you don't get any of Bernie's programs if he can't talk about foreign policy. He said that, and that's been my main thing. I get in so much trouble. I get called a perfectionist just because I want the guy to be like a little bit like Dr. Martin Luther King at the end of his life and admit that you can't really fight poverty if you don't fight the war state too.
yeah,
But
yeah, and that also, which kind of leads into my other piece, is that he won't sort of name the beast, capitalism. He won't, so he kind of skirts around the edge, so it's sort
which
of
is a
democratic social.
yeah, for a guy who calls himself socialist, that's kind of strange.
Yeah,
Calls himself a socialist, he can't say capitalism.
yeah, there's that going on, and then my other piece, the weekly my Now Age Minute, I call this one "You're Missing," and again, while this whole thing about it's like all it is hearings with these guys about, and to watch these Democrats go crazy over this, and this is all they got. Meanwhile, I talked about the opioid crisis epidemic now with people ages 25 to 44. It's like people are dropping off in various age groups now. Young people, the middle class, loneliness, isolation, capitalism. Just destroying lives.
It's the collapse of the job market. Yeah.
Is that?
The collapse of the labor market for working class people.
Yeah,
and even the middle class people now.
Yeah, yeah, and the loneliness of our society. Sort of, we don't know anything about cooperation. It's all competitive. We all have to fight for the same dollar. And that this whole notion of that where sort of we have some sort of community is all broken down. People live alone. They watching TV at homes alone. And this loneliness now is leading to this epidemic. In fact, the recently fired Surgeon General has said in this piece in the Boston Globe about middle-aged male loneliness, which went viral. Quote says, Vivek Murthy, the recently fired Surgeon General of the United States, has said many times in recent years that the most prevalent health issue in the country is not cancer or heart disease or obesity; it is isolation, and that isolation and loneliness kills, and that it's particularly
Ultimately connected to substance abuse.
It leads to substance abuse. It leads to suicides. The
Yeah.
suicide rates are I mean, particularly in our age group, it's just shocking, And I linked to some of these, items in here, and then sort of this the whole idea about this other byproduct of neoliberalism, which is like the McMindfulness industry, which tells you that if there's something wrong, if you're not you're unhappy, you're anxious, you're negative, you're this, you're that, it's your own fucking mental construct. And I'm thinking, like as we said at the beginning, if you're not losing your shit and going crazy, then something's wrong with you, because the society is made to make you go crazy. So the anxiety, the sort of resident anxiety that I know that people feel, if you're not feeling it, then you're not awake to your external circumstances.
Well, so it was at some point last year that these very high-level health researchers came out with a study that was so powerful that they had to mention it in the mainstream media. And it was that what they found just does not happen. And they have found in the last, 10 years of the neoliberal era that we're all trying to survive, that there's actually been a decline in the life expectancy within the white population, and particularly within the white working class, particularly in the white male working class population, those with no more than a high school degree, or I don't know if they could have a couple of years of community college, whatever. And this just does not occur. And then when they broke it down further, what was causing that was they were calling them deaths of despair and deaths of despondency. And they have to do with opioid addiction, painkiller addiction, which has become this huge thing in the last 10 years, and gun suicides and rotting livers and all this, all of which could be meaningfully addressed and significantly overcome, while at the same time doing wonders to heal the ecological rift that threatens life itself, really within the next 3 or 4 decades. It would be massive, huge public works, green jobs programs to bring people together, working side by side. I swear, part of what a lot of what that has to do is so many friendships and connections have to do with common experiences on jobs. I can't tell you how many friendships have come out of school and workplace, and even now with a lot of jobs. I noticed this morning the guy that goes by and does the recycled pickup, to pick up the plastic, and it's wonderful. We got a nice recycling program here in Iowa City. With automation now, they've got that job down to one guy, just one guy. It's automated enough that the mechanical arms come out and pick up the recycling bins and dump it in, and he goes out and checks it's okay. It gets back. Used to be 2 or 3 guys, or sometimes there were women in the work crews. It's important to work with other people, right? And more people are just at computer terminals with headsets on in these Dilbert-like corridors. No wonder they're fucking killing. Excuse me, Kirsten Gillabrand is influencing me here. No wonder there's this crisis. On top of the fact that if you took the poverty level, I believe if you took it up to 150%, which is near poor, and since the federal poverty level is a joke, that's where it ought to be anyway. If you did that, half the population is poor. Most people are 1 or 2 paychecks away from not being able to make a mortgage or a rent payment. So they're incredibly high anxiety and insecure. They're sort of this rolling, constant, ongoing post-traumatic stress disorder. And they can't pay their bills, or they're worried about being able to pay their bills. Their relationships go to hell, and their households are it's a nightmare we've created for hundreds of millions of people in this country.
Yeah. And there was that piece I sent you, a really well done piece in the New York Times on the weekend about stop pretending you're not rich, and saying it's not the top 1%, but it's the top 20%, the sort of upper middle class, and sector of the economy, whereas that they've separated themselves off. They don't see themselves as part of the sort of lower 80. It's really an 80-20 thing. Not so much a 1% and 99%, which is, and I'm going to link to that as well, because I thought
this is something I've been trying to write about for a while and trying to get through people's heads. On the left, we got so much with Occupy into the 1% versus the 99%. I'm sorry, we are not the 99%. And pretty much, you go to just about any society on earth, and you find this critical division between a top fifth and the rest of the population. And this is getting a lot more discussion than it used to, I think, in part because as people are processing the Trump election and realizing that there's a lot of working class alienation from and anger at not just the 1%, but at the professional class. It's a real big factor. I don't want to overdo the white working class vote for Trump. You and I were talking about that privately before, that's really exaggerated. But that is a phenomenon of the neoliberal era, is the white working class. A lot of, it is primarily the white working class voting for right-wing candidates, and liberals go, well, gee, don't they know they're voting against their pocketbook interests, and and that the 1%, Donald Trump's going to screw them over. All of which is true, but kind of misses the point. How working class people experience class on a day-to-day basis almost never, if ever, involves any interaction with a 1%er, and almost always and every day involves sort of finger-pointing directions from professional managerial class people. That's where class is experienced with most people, and they ain't poor, and particularly in the higher professional ranks. They do very well. I can show you some neighborhoods in Iowa City. There isn't a 1%er in them. Oh, but my goodness, are they beautiful neighborhoods with wonderful trees and cars on the front lawn. Life's very good. in for the associate deans and the tenured professors and the better placed lawyers and doctors in this town. Trust me.
Yeah, and the blinders go on. The blinders go on so quickly. Once you cross over that line into that stratosphere, you start to lose your. When I said before about you go insane when you acquiesce to it, because you have to just kind of turn off your sense of empathy and sensitivity towards towards other people suffering.
One of the real problems in the professional class, and let's call that the managerial professional class, the upper 20%, is they have this incredibly strong belief in the ideology of meritocracy. They just are absolutely convinced that where they are is because of their heart. In some cases maybe it is, some cases it isn't. Oftentimes it's who you know. And advantages you had in your household. There were books in your household. There was your parents were from the professional class. They got you. They taught you how to apply to do college applications. They made sure you got extra tutoring. They took advanced placement classes. There are advantages from birth in the professional class, not just in 1%. And, they believe so strongly that they created their own status in society. And the sort of unstated downside of that is that the guys that are cleaning the parking ramps, that are cleaning up their offices at the university, or that are driving around doing groundskeeping, on the campus, didn't apply themselves and are stupid and didn't work hard. And so then on the other side, you get which creates a kind of anger that you see in that bumper sticker that you see in trailer parks that says, "My kid beat up your honor student." Well, yeah, I understand that anger, sure.
So I'm going to link to all these pieces when I post the article, and I just want to go on to do what we do to kind of turn gears, directions a little bit, talk a little bit about music.
I don't know anything about music.
Yeah, so I was going to bring up Sgt. Pepper, but Sgt. Pepper has been so talked about, and I've got nothing to add, about Sgt. Pepper. Yeah, it's 50 years, 50 years ago today, whatever. But I want to talk about a record that's out, but actually somebody who's a friend of mine who we talked about.
I don't even know this record, so okay.
Yeah, so
go ahead.
Yeah, so actually a friend of mine has got this album out, which has been in the vault at Columbia Records for 50 years. And it's called Kickin' Child by Dion. And this album was recorded almost synonymously in the same studio with Dylan recording.
Guy, right? Yeah, okay. Yeah, Dion from the late 50s, and then Abraham, Martin, and John. Yeah,
exactly, that Dion. And so what people didn't know, there was this period between the Wanderer and Runaround Sue of the early 60s to what happened with Abraham, Martin, and John in 1968, which is actually his biggest selling single.
Oh, yeah.
There was this whole kind of electric folky thing that he was doing, which ended up inspiring Dylan to go electric, strangely enough. They were working with the same producer at Columbia, Tom Johnson, who produced Highway 61. And it was actually Dion who kind of promoted the idea of putting a band track on with Dylan, and that's sort of how it happened. But this particular album was recorded really at the same time, 1965, and Columbia didn't know what to do with it. They didn't release it. They had a disagreement with Dion, and they kind of just put it in the dustbin, and it's been there for 50 years, 52 years in the dustbin. Recently rediscovered by this kind of archival record company out in Brooklyn. And
it's kind of a folk gone electric type of thing.
Yeah, so when you listen to the record, and it pretty much that
with Dion. Okay.
Yeah. So it sounds musically very much like Dylan going electric, but with Dion singing. So you think, hey, wow, it sounds like Dylan with an actual singer, and it's a remarkable record. And had it come out when it came out, the reviews are coming out now 4 and 5 stars for this album that was recorded over 50 years ago. That never had a chance to make its mark,
Yeah.
And it's quite something to sort of watch this. I'm sort of seeing the background, what's going on, because he's a friend of mine, and watching this process of it finally coming to life after all these years and getting all these spectacular reviews. So right now it's only available on vinyl and CD. It's not a digital download, but so people can get it on Amazon. I'm going to link to it just because I want to link to it. But it's an era where a lot of people, Dylan maniacs, the whole idea about Dylan going electric.
Dylanologists, they call themselves.
Yeah, Dylan going electric, which is like a sort of another Genesis movement in sort of that modern era of rock and roll, of like a Rolling Stone and such, actually happened via this relationship with Dion. And Dion, he never kind of talks about this stuff. I asked him about it, and he said, it's just sort of my life. It's not kind of thing it doesn't feel historical to him. It just feels historical to everybody else.
In his memoir, Dylan cites Hearing the Animals version of House of New Orleans as
a Rising Sun, right?
Yeah, the right House of the Rising Sun as a big wake up call to him on how you could in fact merge electric. Yeah.
So the Dion's.
Yeah, this is Dion doing that, and you're saying
no. Dion's side of the story here.
She mentioned this to Dylan.
Dion's side of the story was that Dylan recorded House of the Rising Sun acoustically. Dion went to Tom Johnson and said, let's put a backing musical track, electric backing on this, and then play it for Bob.
Oh.
Which they did. And Bob sat down and loved it and recorded whatever the previous album to Highway 61 was, did the whole second half of the album electric. And that was the moment. But that was something that just didn't come out until this album was released, and sort of him retelling all these stories. So
it's all kinds of stories that are they're dependent on decisions that were made by higher ups and in recording firms. And
Columbia.
The same thing is in sports. Before the blacks really broke into baseball, even after Jackie Robinson, there were black guys who just wiled away in the minor leagues, even though they were hitting 350 and 40 home runs a year. And decisions were made that they were never going to be, who knows? It would have changed the course of baseball history if some of these guys had been brought up to the White Sox or the Yankees or the Mets, in 1960 something. Yeah.
Yeah. So before we close out, so on your website now, people can go and subscribe to Paul Street. Okay, what the heck does that mean? They can go there and go to your website and subscribe monthly. And what does that basically mean? So subscribing, they're getting your stuff anyway, right? But the truth of the matter, let me be your advocate for a moment here, okay? That you work hard on this stuff, okay? The doctor is in the freaking house, okay? You're working hard on these pieces, and people get a lot out of what you do, okay? Right. So you gotta pay the bartender here, okay? So when you go to paulstreet.com, and you just go to that page where it says subscribe. You have two little options there. Click one of them and put your change in the tip jar for the bartender, whatever it is.
Yeah. And when I ask for money, this is not any kind of effort to get even anything remotely like rich or to push myself up into the 20%. It basically, my goal and ambition for writing has always been to just try and scrape by a minimally adequate working class income. A lot of us on the left provide a lot of free content, quite willingly over the many years, but ultimately it's unsustainable, right? I mean, this is not anybody's choice. A moneyless society. We're not there yet, and frankly, there's a kind of a star system on the left that a few big names, I'm not going to say them, just tend to get recycled again and again in the official left media venues. And we've got a lot of smart people out here that aren't getting heard and probably can't continue writing indefinitely without some financial support.
Exactly. And I'm going to say the same.
Same for you.
I'm going to say the same for myself, at my website, there's the same chance to do the same, like Paul, I put a lot of effort in and try to the idea is that, people kind of wake up to something different and, people seem to like what they read. But like everywhere else you see, we also live by the same economics. So, put your dollar in the tip jar for the boys here.
You got it.
All right. So we're going to talk again next week, and we'll have more madness to bring to the people.
Power to the people.
All right. Talk to you soon.
Yep. Bye-bye.
Bye.